Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is.
Welcome to the Hank Cisco Show. My guest today is from, we say he's from Washington, but that's his office is in Washington. He's a congressman, and his name is Jim Gerlach. And he looks like a fighter, you know. He looks like, he looks like Billy Conn, really years ago.
From Pittsburgh.
Fighter that fought, and then you're from the Pittsburgh area. That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to have Jim here. He's a very likable guy, you know. We just got to know each other a couple of times we met, but here this morning he talking about Norristown in this area, Norristown area. We're in the Norristown High School studio, and we have the students behind the cameras here, and I'm very happy to be able to work along and have you here as our guest. So I want you to tell us something about yourself. Well, you know, this is getting to know you, you know. So I want to get to know you. You know, you're a congressman. So where are you from?
Okay, well, thanks for having me, by the way. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
It's an honor.
As you just mentioned, I was born and raised out in the Pittsburgh area, about an hour north of Pittsburgh, a town called Elwood City, a small steel
The rival
town.
of Philadelphia Phillies, right?
That's right, that's right. Born and raised there, and then went to school in central Pennsylvania, Dickinson College in Carlisle, just west of Harrisburg, and then also stayed and went to law school there. Graduated in 1980, and then came down to this area where I got my first job with a law firm in Westchester, which is the county seat of Chester County. So that's how I ended up down here in this region. And then back in 1990, I ran for the State House of Representatives and defeated an 18-year incumbent that year. I was in the State House for 2 terms, 4 years, and then
You say the State House. What do you?
Yeah, the State House of Representatives in Harrisburg, in the state legislature.
And you were working out of where? Out of
the district was in Chester County.
Chester County. Okay.
Yeah, basically from Downingtown up to Pottstown area. And then in 1994, won election to the state senate, and I served in the state senate, which had parts of my district at that time, Chester County, Montgomery County, and Berks County, and was in the state senate for 8 years. And then in 2002, was elected to the 6th district congressional seat, which is parts of Montgomery County, Chester County, and Berks County. So that's a pretty quick
So you
history.
have knowledge of this whole area, which is good.
Yeah.
And now you're a congressman, so that covers that area, right?
Yeah. Well, the experience I had in the state legislature was great because it really did, A, give me experience in the legislative process,
Right,
and
right.
number 2, help me to get to know the communities in this area. And as a result, I think that allows me to be a little more effective than somebody that's not done it before.
Well, as a congressman, what do you do? You know, I'm gonna say like I'm on the corner. Hey, what do you do?
What are you doing?
know, what do you do?
Well, actually, it's a great job because it's something different every day. You really have two main roles. The first role is, as you can imagine, being in Congress, introducing legislation, voting on legislation, working in the committee structure to produce a good bill that can come out of committee and go onto the floor for a vote. So it's legislating, working on bills and voting on bills. But the other part of the job is equally important, I think, and that's handling constituent problems. Any problem that your constituents have with a federal agency or a federal program, you want to try to help them with that. And so it might be anything from helping a company with an EPA problem.
A school?
Could be a school with school issues with the Department of Education, or working on transportation issues, or might be helping with some environmental issue that some company has, as I say. Taxpayers might have a difficulty getting the refund check out of the IRS, so helping clear away that bureaucracy.
Federal,
it's all
right?
federal things, yeah. And so you really, every day, have something different to do, and that's what makes it a lot of fun and really educational.
Good. Now we talk about education. What's on the platter? What's cooking? You know, is there anything on the horizon that's going to be helpful in education? I hear something about the libraries are being cut and all. What's the story?
Well, from the federal perspective, I think there's 2 or 3 issues on education that are at the forefront right now. One is what's called No Child Left Behind Act. and that was a federal statute that was passed back in 2001 to try to provide more accountability in our educational system. And when I say accountability, what that means is that we want to make sure every child has the basic reading skills, math skills, science skills that they need to really be successful. And so the only way you can really determine if each child in each school is getting to those proficiency levels is by testing them. And so now you have a lot of testing, what's called the PSSA test here in Pennsylvania, to determine whether or not kids are really reaching their proficiency levels where they should be each grade. That has, in and of itself, brought about a number of concerns raised by educators, such things as what do you do with a child that has limited English proficiency? Should they be taking a test in English if they don't know English very well? Or what do you do about the special...
That's a problem.
That's
now,
a problem.
Not a problem, but something to look into as
Yeah,
far as language barriers.
Yeah, and there's some issues there that we can explore. Plus also special education students, those with disabilities, be it emotional or physical or mental or cognitive. Should they be tested, and what kind of tests should they be undertaking? Those are issues, plus funding. If you're going to require more assessment, more testing, and you identify children that need more help then because of that, how do you get them the remediation, and who pays for that? So that's an issue, funding. So all of those issues are swirling around No Child Left Behind, and so it's a hot issue right now in Washington.
Yeah, just last week, Norristown High School played host to, I forget, it was 100 or so superintendents. And I'm very proud that, Norristown played host to the superintendents about, and the subject was the...
No Child Left Behind.
Right.
And their concerns in those three areas, in essence, limited English proficiency situations, special education students being tested, and whether there's the funding there to help the schools do this stuff. So we're looking at that whole thing and hopefully coming up with some answers as to what the best approach ought to be for that. Right. Special education in of itself is another big issue. Back in the early 70s.
Well, when that's special education,
special education,
what's it mean?
It's education services for children with disabilities.
Okay.
It might be emotional disability, a physical disability, or a mental disability. And whenever a child is designated as being quote-unquote disabled, they come under what's called IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. They're then entitled to a certain level of educational services that's based upon their unique circumstances, depending on their disability. But many times those individual education plans for those children can be very, very expensive. And the initial law was passed back in the 70s, and it called for the federal government paying up to 40% of that cost. And it's not unheard of in some schools or school districts to see one education plan for one child costing $150,000 a year or $200,000 a year. So it's a lot of money in some instances. So over the past 5 years, Congress has been trying to increase the federal share of special education funding, and just this past year passed another piece of legislation that increased it by another $1 billion. So that, again, more money is going to the states, which in turn can go to school districts like Norristown to help pay for their special education costs.
Well, now I had as a guest Commissioner Matthew, Montgomery County Chairman, Commissioners, and he talked about the traffic coming into Norristown and the Turnpike and all. What's that all about? There's a federal. Do you have anything to do with that to help us get cars in and out of Norristown and help Norristown? And one other thing. Yeah. I don't know. Do you have anything to do with potholes? I mean,
No, not directly.
Do I have to call Washington or
No, we can call the local
do something
folks
to help pave the streets? Like Main Street. It's boom. One guy said. He says, there's a pothole so big, says, I went by there and there was a family of 6 people living in it. So I hope the potholes don't get that big. But what's the story on that? The highways and all? Can you help us?
Yeah.
There's something on the table in reference to...
Yeah, we're going to look at this year, probably coming up in the next week or two, actually. It's called the Highway Authorization Bill. And what that means is every 6 years, Congress passes an authorization bill which then determines the formula that drives dollars back to the states for major highway and bridge projects and mass transit projects. So each time you go to the gas station and you fill up your car, you're paying for each gallon you put in your car, 18.5 cents is federal tax, liquid fuels tax that goes down to Washington into a big pot. And this highway authorization bill has the formula that drives those dollars back to the states. Now, the last time the authorization was done, we had a Pennsylvania congressman who was the chairman of the House Transportation Committee, Bud Schuster. And the formula under his guidance was written in a way where in Pennsylvania we get back about $1.18 in liquid fuels monies for every dollar we send down to Washington. So we're making out pretty good. And all those dollars, I say, are the dollars used to do the big projects like the 202 renovation work that's being done, for example, the bridge work.
In other words, the 202, is that federal?
Federal, 80% federal.
You're talking about that pot money, okay.
Yeah, it's federal. Major road projects are 80% federal dollars, 20% state dollars. So you need the federal dollars to leverage the 20% state dollars to do these projects. So this authorization bill will again set the formula for what the states will get back. That helps determine obviously what we get and therefore what kind of projects we can undertake. And there's some important projects for Norristown that we're going to try to have part of that discussion, part of that authorization. For example, there's discussion about the Lafayette Street Extension Project, which is an important project for bringing more traffic into downtown Norristown to stimulate the local economy. Get more people coming in to go to the businesses, to come in and go to the restaurants, come in and do things, just create more pedestrian traffic and more people in the downtown. To do that, we'd have to extend the existing Lafayette Street down to the Turnpike and create an interchange there, which would allow people to come off the Turnpike and come into Norristown much more easily than what can happen now. And conversely, maybe come down 202, come across the Dan Iyer Bridge, hit Lafayette Street, and go right through to the Turnpike. And so create a much better ingress-egress situation for downtown Norristown. That project is probably about $100 million to do, soup to nuts. Wow. But I know the county is very interested in it. The local officials here, the mayor and city and borough council are very interested in it.
I know Jim Matthew bragged about it. It's coming on.
Jim's been a big supporter of it. Tom Ellis is a big supporter of it. I think Ruth Damsker is as well. The mayor and borough council folks are all supportive of it. So we just need to try to use this authorization bill to try to get some dollars towards that project to get it rolling.
Now with Norristown's going through this revitalization, so can you help in that way, or how's that?
There's a number of different things.
You're talking about roads now. Is there anything else?
Well,
Matthews mentioned something about we have 3 miles of waterfront. Develop at something like Conshohocken and Manayunk. Manayunk don't have as much waterfront as we have, or even Conshohocken. So
you have some old industrial sites right along the river there, and so another program that's helpful to towns like Norristown would be the Brownfields program, which takes old industrial sites and helps clean them up, helps stabilize them, and then hopefully encourages developers to come in and redevelop them, much like what happened in Conshohocken. There is a developer that's interested in a number of those sites along the river, and I think is waiting for the opportunities to see more transportation, more folks in the downtown that will spur economic growth. And so that's why a Lafayette Street extension project is important, because if that artery is improved and creates more accessibility to the downtown, that creates more development opportunities along the river.
So bring new businesses in.
New business. So brownfields revitalization, transportation projects. Of course, there's a need for
brownfields. That's what they have down in Conshohocken.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the president was down there.
Correct.
President Bush was down there.
Correct.
That's right.
Same thing. Okay. Same thing as what we're looking at.
Do we have anything like that around? I guess. Down
already there has been brownfield money, federal brownfields money spent in Norristown to assess the brownfields along the river there. And there's a developer that's interested in moving forward.
On the east end of town, there's some big mills that closed down. That would be like what you're talking about.
Well, those would be eligible as well. And the county and the borough have to work together in prioritizing what sites they want to see move forward for redevelopment, and we can help with that as well. We also helped with the Elmwood Zoo. We got them in the FY04 appropriations bill some money to improve the zoo, which I think is a real gem for the community. It's a shame that people it's a shame that people don't know that the zoo is there. Many people don't know it's there, and it's just a great resource for the community to bring people in, and I think they do a wonderful job. So we got them some dollars to help with that.
Right, getting people to come into town. That's talking about new business coming in town. I got a tip for you.
Okay.
I was at the diner out on 202, Double T I think it's called, and here he tells me that he's building a new diner in Norristown, okay, where the Pizza Hut used to be on Johnson Highway. They knocked the building down. He's going to build, he says, I'm going to build a a diner, and I'm going to have a meeting room there for 30, 40 people.
Oh, good.
Right on it's Johnson Highway. It's 202.
Yeah.
But isn't that something now?
That's
A
good.
big diners moving into Norristown, so
Well,
that's
that's a
gonna
great sign.
bring people in, so that's now tell me something about yourself now, okay? Now, you're married, right?
Yes, I'm married.
Okay, tell me something about your family,
Okay, I have 3 children and 3 stepchildren, total of 6.
Right.
And our oldest is my daughter, who's a sophomore in college up in New York. And then I have a son, Jimmy, goes to Downingtown West High School. He's a senior and is going to hopefully get accepted to college here in the next few weeks and go somewhere, we hope. Then I have a 15-year-old, and then, as I say, have 3 stepchildren as well. So they keep us hopping when we're not otherwise doing this congressional stuff.
And do they get to see you much or what?
Oh yeah. Well, we're a
You've been
session.
in Washington, you have to go back and forth.
Well,
That's
we're
a tough-
there. We're there typically 3 days a week: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now, as we get in towards the spring and even the summer months, we'll extend that out to 4 or 5 days. But yeah, I drive down and back. It's only about
you drive down?
Yeah, about 2.5-hour drive, which isn't too bad. And as soon as the last vote is over with, back in the car and back home again. So yeah, we're able to see the family
That's
quite a
good.
bit.
Now, there's been some talk about a veterans cemetery in this area. Now, tell us something about that.
Yep.
We don't have that many veteran cemeteries, right?
No, there's
So what's the story on that?
Well, first of all, they have to be created by federal enactment, Act of Congress.
That's your baby, right?
Well, we got that done.
because that's Congress. It's not a state senator or a
Right.
mayor. It's
Right,
your
a
baby.
national veterans cemetery under the.
I'm a member of the Catholic War Vets, so I know that we got Gus Domino and has been in there pushing a lot.
You mentioned Gus. Gus came to me when I was running for Congress and said, we've been working for years to try to get a national veterans cemetery established here in southeastern Pennsylvania because the closest place for veterans to be buried now is Fort Indiantown Gap outside of Harrisburg.
Where? Oh.
Fort Indiantown Gap.
Okay, yeah.
In Lebanon County.
Yeah.
And that's well over, 80, 90 miles, in some cases 100 miles for the families of veterans that would have to drive to visit a gravesite. So we do need a veteran cemetery here in southeastern Pennsylvania. And there had been legislation in Congress year after year to have one established at Valley Forge. But that had gotten too much opposition from the Park Service and from some groups that support the park because they don't see that being the mission of the park itself. I would like to see it at Valley Forge, but it just wasn't in the cards apparently. So we introduced a bill when my first bill when I got into the House to require the establishment of a cemetery within 4 years, but have the site selected by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And that's in fact what happened. We passed the bill in the House and Senate. The President signed it in the Oval Office on Veterans Day last year.
Right.
And that kicked off the process now of trying to identify a site. And there's a couple sites that look like they're percolating to the top.
You look one up in Greater Fort.
There's one in Bucks County. There's a site in Graterford. And there's a site over in Pennhurst in East Vincent Township along the Schuylkill in Chester County, right across the river from like Roarsford, that area. So those seem to be the main sites right now. And there's pluses and minuses with each. But what we're hearing from our veterans, we're hearing that probably Pennhurst might be the best site of those. And so we're working with the Veterans Administration to get that finalized.
But, I'm just wondering, why do they have to have a big, where you can, a couple minis, small, located different parts of the state, make it easier, like one east, west, and central.
Well, they do. They have one in western Pennsylvania.
That's western.
Yep, and they have one, of course, in Fort Indiantown Gap, which is central Pennsylvania.
Central.
And now we need the one here in the Philadelphia
Oh,
area.
okay.
So this is the one that completes that.
Oh, okay.
Completes that.
Well, what's wrong with the one up in Graterford? Something about the prison or something?
Well, the site is actually adjacent to the prison, and there's a lot of veterans that just don't want to be buried next to those that are incarcerated for murder and rape and robbery and everything. They just don't want to be associated with that, and I can understand that emotionally.
They got a wall there, don't they?
They got a big wall, very big wall. But they don't want to be, buried next to, a facility like that. But we'll see what happens. I mean, the process is still unfolding, and we'll see what the final decision is.
Now, what else you got on that you can tell us that you're doing in Washington that could be helpful?
Well, we're working on
helpful for us around here in Norristown.
Well, I think a very important project, and it's tied to transportation, is the Schuylkill Valley Metro project, which would, in essence, reestablish commuter rail service from Reading area all the way down here to King of Prussia and Norristown, and then from Norristown back into the city. Now, you already have, service now to Philadelphia from this area, but there's not the service from Norristown out to Reading.
Oh.
And so we want to try to
Yeah, we have a Reading Railroad.
Yeah, we have a Reading Railroad, and we have a Schuylkill River corridor rail line that Norfolk Southern uses for freight.
What do you call it, the corridor?
Schuylkill River corridor?
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
along the river corridor there. Norfolk Southern has a freight line that they run. In fact, this commuter rail service would run on the freight line, same right of way. But we think it would bring about 50,000 riders onto the line, try to reduce some of the congestion along 422 that exists now drive time, but also, and I think most importantly, help revitalize the older communities like Norristown, Phoenixville, Pottstown, and then of course the city of Reading out the other end of the line. So we're trying to get both the federal support for that new project as well as state support, and we're working on that issue.
You know, there's some great restaurants in this immediate area, you know, in Upper Merion, Phoenixville, in around the Norristown area, some great restaurants. And, you know, I think, I don't know, we got to, something's got to break loose, and it's getting people into town. You see, now business is moving in, so, you know, you as a congressman, I like you. I like the way you handle the answers, and you're very knowledgeable, and I really feel comfortable that you're my representative in Washington. See,
Thank you.
now you get to see the president or anything? I mean, you're
yeah,
in Washington.
occasionally.
You know,
Yeah, occasionally.
some of the students would say, "Well, he's in Washington. Do you see the president?" You know, how close is your office to some of these guys we see on TV?
Pretty close. Actually, I've had an opportunity to be with the president on a couple of occasions. In the White House, when he was doing the welfare reform stuff, had us down. I was in the state legislature, part of the welfare reform legislative movement, and he had us down there to the cabinet room. He also was in the Oval Office with him when he signed our cemetery bill, and then was on Air Force One with him on a couple of occasions when he came to Pennsylvania or left from Pennsylvania to go back to Washington, so I had a chance to chat with him there. So. Great experience, and Hank, if you get a chance to be on Air Force One, don't pass it up, as our inspector says. So it's a great opportunity just to be part of that.
Well, you know, it's good that, but that's a tough job, though, isn't it? Dealing with all the complaints and people. How do you handle that?
99% of the people are wonderful, and if they have a problem and we try to help them, and we're successful, great, and sometimes we're not successful, but as long as we've tried hard, they recognize that and appreciate it. 99% of the people are just great and love representing them. There's a few that, you know, you can't deal with very easily, but that's all part of life, I guess.
Jim, you got to remember, all sunshine makes deserts. You know, you can't have the sun shining all the time. If you want the sun to shine all the time, go to Sahara Desert. Nobody's there, you know. So if you want a beautiful garden, you have to have the rain and the snow and the hail and everything,
That's right? That's right.
So, you know, are you a politician? If you say, when somebody says you're a politician.
Well, I guess by the definition, someone that's involved in politics is a politician, but I don't look at myself that way. I look at myself as somebody that's public service. And, you know, decided not to be employed in the private sector, but to be in public service, and it has its costs and it has its benefits, but you got to like what you're doing no matter what you do day in and day out. You got to like what you're doing in life, and if you like what you're doing, you like getting up in the morning doing it, that's great. If you don't, maybe it's time to switch to something else.
Yeah. What's your area do you cover?
I have a big area. I have in Montgomery County, all Lower Marion Township down to City Line Avenue, up to here.
You have all Norristown.
Norristown. I have East Norton. I have Plymouth Township. I have up to Collegeville, Skipback, Perkiomen, Trapp area, all the way down to Limerick and Pottstown. In Montgomery County. In Chester County, basically Tredyffrin Township.
Tredyffrin.
All the way across the Route 30 corridor to Exton, Downingtown, Coatesville.
Wow.
Everything north of that in Chester County, Phoenixville, Elverson, Honeybrook area. And then in Berks County, I have half of Berks County, in essence, the southern half, including half the city of Reading.
That's near Reading. You have part of Reading, too?
I have part of Reading, and they go all the way up to Kutztown and Topton.
You're a big man. I got you here in Norristown here. With all that coverage, and I got you here in Norristown.
It's a big district.
But that is a big area. So how do you communicate with these people? A
lot of ways. We have 3 district offices, one in each county. Okay. And we have one here in Trapp in our area here, and one down in Chester Springs in Chester County, and one over in Wyomissing outside of Reading. So we have a place every every constituent can get to, hopefully pretty easily. We're only email away. We get a lot of emails, we get a lot of letters, we get a lot of phone calls, we do town meetings, we visit places of employment to meet with people. We go to all the community events that we can. So when you combine all of that, hopefully we're staying in touch with people in our district.
Well, that's important, and I'm glad that you're right with it as far as the educational part, helping education. I think that's so important today. In fact, in this studio here, I think John Doyle was telling me they're getting some new equipment. I don't know if it's coming through federal or what. I don't know, maybe, but if not, how about helping them out, getting a little bit, get a couple more.
Well, we can talk to them. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, see what we can do. Well, what else you want to tell me about yourself?
Well, that's pretty much it. It's a job that requires a lot of time, and so you're constantly weighing, how much time you're going to give to being out in the community and being with your constituents or being in Washington, versus the time you need to still spend with your family and have quality time with them. Right, and it's a constant tension between those two things. But most people figure out what the right mix is and are able to handle the job. But it's as I said earlier, it's a very educational job, and it's a lot of satisfaction when you help communities.
Yes.
And when you help people with their problems. It can be very, very satisfying. So at the end of the day, Hank, you got to like what you're doing, and I like what I'm doing, but it's up to the voters to decide if they want me to keep doing it or not.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that I was able to get you here. I know you're a busy man when you mentioned all the different districts and you represent, so I'm very happy to have you here. And to be able to know that you're a person that we can contact if we need help in this area. And so here on behalf of the students here at Norristown High School and the people of Norristown area, East, North, West, North, Norristown, this will be televised in that area. So I want to thank you so much. Thank you. All I can tell you is keep bobbing and weaving there in Washington, okay?
Thanks, Hank. Appreciate it.
And thank you.
Great to be here.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing us to come into your home. And all I can say, just telling him, keep bobbing and weaving. So thank you, everybody.
Great.